Hey, welcome back. Joe from Home Studio Corner here. If you're just joining us, this is Season 3 of Mix Together, where I go through mixing an entire song from start to finish. This is the third round. If you want to get the multi-tracks to this song and the two other songs that I've mixed as a part of the Mix Together series, head over to homestudiocorner.com/MT, and you can get the tracks there. So up to this point, it's not been super fun. We have done things like organize the session, check for phase problems, group the tracks together in a way that makes sense. We haven't even listened to the song yet. And if you're scratching your head thinking, Joe, this is the most boring way to mix ever, I would challenge you and say this is a way that works. So many people will dive in and start pushing up faders and throwing plugins, and they'll take forever and never get anywhere. This is a method that I've developed over the years of mixing hundreds of songs that works really well for me. So give it a shot before you dog it. Because like most things in life, it's not going to be as fun as we thought. There aren't really shortcuts. It generally requires work, most things that are worth doing. So where we are now is we've gotten ourselves to a place where we can now start mixing. But I want to talk about one topic really quickly, well, for a minute or two, because it needs to be discussed briefly, and that is the topic of gain staging. It seems like every day I get an email or question on social media about gain staging. How do I gain stage? What's the right level that all the tracks should be at? And I think there's this underlying assumption that if you found a magical level to put everything at, that the mix would just suddenly happen. And remember what I just got done saying, there are no such things as shortcuts. It takes work, it takes effort, it takes practice, it takes repetition. So a lot of people will say, hey, if I set all my tracks to negative 20 dB, will that be the right volume for everything? And the answer is, who knows? If I have a song with only 5 tracks, I can make each of those tracks louder without clipping my main mix bus or my master fader. If I have a song with 200 tracks, they're going to all have to be quieter so that they can all blend together and not still clip my mix bus. The only thing I'm concerned about when I'm mixing, especially when I'm setting levels, is that these meters over here do not clip. My main output, the actual track I'm recording to, or my mix bus. They should all be showing me the same thing. As long as they're not clipping, I'm good. I also am not trying to get super close to them. So I would rather the level be down here with plenty of room. That doesn't mean it's going to sound better. It doesn't mean there's less compression or that's less dynamic. It actually just means that there's not any clipping happening and I can push a vocal up louder or make a chorus a little bit louder without having to worry about clipping. One of the most common problems people run into when they first start mixing is they have everything too loud and they get started on their mix and they're doing good and they're adding some compression and some EQ, and then boom, the light goes off and they've clipped. So now they have to go turn all the tracks down. Then they get going again and then boom, it clips again, and they keep having to turn everything down. It's super frustrating and feels like you're moving backwards all the time. I say start the other way. Get a great sounding mix using only the levels and panning, and then make sure that great sounding mix isn't coming anywhere close to clipping your mix bus. Then start adding plugins, and you'll find as long as you are adding plugins, you're not adding tons of volume when you add a plugin to a track, then that level will stay roughly the same. It won't change much, and you won't have to worry about clipping. Now, the biggest piece of advice I can give you to help you mix more consistently and to keep yourself from playing that game of constantly clipping your mixes and having to go back and forth and turn things down is to always mix at the same volume. I don't care what that volume is, but always the volume knob on my speakers stays the same. I've got it in one spot, and I mix through a mixer. So my whole mix in Studio One is coming down a channel on my mixer. I've got one fader controlling it. I've got one position for mixing and another position that's about 10 dB quieter for mastering. That's it. It's in one of those two positions whenever I'm mixing or mastering. So now I know if I've got the fader set at the mixing position and I've got the volume knobs where I always keep it, then if I hit play and things are too loud, then I need to turn everything down. Because I'm used to mixing at a certain specific volume. It's a volume I've picked arbitrarily that feels nice to me, that's not too loud and not too quiet, and I mix everything to that. So the key to consistency is to leave some things consistent. That means leave your volume knob in one spot. Just pick a spot and mix a few songs and see how it works. If it ends up you're still clipping your mix bus, then turn the volume knob louder. That means you will hear things louder. You won't have to turn them up as loudly in your mix. It's so simple. To me, that is gain staging. Oh, I keep clipping my mix bus. Then you need to turn up your speakers so you're not having to turn up the tracks themselves in order to hear them. It's super simple. Now, I'm going to pull my fader down on my mixer because I have a sneaky suspicion these tracks are going to be too loud anyway. Let me hit play just with all the faders basically at 0, and let's just see where we are in like the loudest part of the song. So that's with my fader 10 dB down. If I push it all the way up, it gets too loud for me. It's uncomfortably loud. That's how I know that the tracks are too hot. Now, it's not a problem with the recording. Just typically when you get tracks from people, they're probably going to be too loud. You have a couple of ways to deal with that, and that's going to kind of segue us into doing our static mix. The static mix for me is the most important part of the entire mix process. To me, static mix is where the mix is made because we are setting levels and panning, and a mix is nothing but setting levels and panning. It is setting the balance of the mix. How are the tracks going to balance off of one another volume-wise and in the stereo spectrum? When we move the faders and move the pan knobs, is it going to be balanced? And from there, then we'll add plugins to balance out the frequencies, to balance out the dynamics using tools like EQ and compression. But we have to get these levels right. So I encourage you, spend more time than you think is necessary just getting a static mix, meaning no plugins at all. Now, I've got some plugins here on these tracks that just default to being here, but they're not doing any processing. They're all turned off. There's no processing happening. They're just there when I need them. So all my tracks, you're just hearing them raw and unprocessed. And I'm going to spend the next, probably, I imagine it's going to be this video plus another video or two, just working on my static mix and making it sound as good as I can make it sound with just moving these cute little faders and these cute little pan knobs, or sliders in this case. All right, so where do I start? Well, I used to, and if you look at the first series of Mix Together, I might have done it this way. I used to say, let's just bring all the faders down and just start to turn them up and just have a big mass chaos of sound and then sort your way through it as the song plays. At this point, I don't like to do that quite as much. I still like to take it in chunks and get rough levels for everything and then listen to the song as the whole. Because if I hit play right now with my volume where I normally have it for mixing, it's going to blow my ears out. It's going to be too loud for you as well. So rather than doing that, I'm going to take it section by section and get the levels to where they're at a point where it's not hurting my ears, it's not too loud, and I'm not concerned about it blowing out my mix. But it's easier for me to do that section by section than it is to go just all faders up and go to town. Does that make sense? Okay. So what I'm going to do now, I'm just going to do it the easy way. I've got everything routed through these buses. I'm going to turn all those buses down, including the drums, and actually, no, I'm going to leave these all at 0. Nope, changed my mind again. How am I going to do this? See, I told you this is going to be raw, uncut, just me figuring things out. Let's do this. Yeah, I'm just going to bring, I'm changing my mind like 8 times. I'm going to bring all the faders down. Faders down. Everything down. I'll let these bus faders all stay at 0, and I'll bring the tracks in. And the idea here is I'm going to turn them up till they're at a level I'm used to. My speakers are set and ready to go. So now I know if I turn up this kick bus and I turn up these 2 kick tracks, once I get to a certain level, I know that's my kick drum level because I've mixed so many songs at this volume. So let's try that. That's my kick drum level-ish. It's pretty close. A couple of things I like to do. If my faders are close to 0, then I'm happy. If the tracks are so hot that I have to pull the faders way down here, you'll notice the difference between here and here. Look at the distance. This is basically the same physical distance with my mouse. It goes from 24 to 36, negative 24 to negative 36 volume. The same distance up here goes from 0 to negative 6. So this is a 6 dB difference. This is a 12 dB difference for the same physical distance on the fader, because faders are logarithmic. So if my faders are having to be down here for me to get, because everything's too loud, I would rather bring the faders back up and turn down the actual audio file itself. You'll see me do this quite a bit. I'll select something, and I've got a couple of keyboard shortcuts that let me turn things down and up in 3 dB increments. Sometimes you'll see me select something, and you'll see it jump to a bigger volume like that, and then come down. What I'm doing there is I'm normalizing the audio, which takes it as loud as it will go before clipping, and then I'm bringing it back down. That's what I do normally if I have to bring tracks up. So for example, if I have the faders here and it's still not loud enough in the mix and I'm having to push these faders higher, rather than push these faders way up past 0, I'll go in and I will boost the volume of the actual audio track itself. It's called clip gain in Pro Tools. Every system I know of has something like that. You could also use something like Mix Tool. We mentioned earlier, it has a gain knob. You could go in and increase or decrease volume that way. I like to do it on the tracks themselves because it's just a little quicker, and I don't have to, I can visually see which ones I've adjusted and quickly come in and adjust them again if I need to. I do like the keyboard shortcuts for that as well. So that's what I'm going to do now. I'm going to slowly turn up my drums until I have a good, decent drum mix. Then we'll move on. Here we go. Oh yeah, final piece of advice. I like to do all of this, most of this part, in the loudest part of the song where the most tracks are playing. If I set a great level and it's just for the verse and I've got everything nice and loud and then it goes into the chorus, guess what? It might get so loud that it clips. So let's do this part of the mix during the loudest section of the song. And we'll spend a lot of time in this loudest section actually. And it'll make sense why we're doing that later. But let's hit play and start setting some levels. I'm going to go back a little bit and find a spot where the toms are hitting just to get a level on those. Where are my toms at? Here's some. It doesn't look like he plays the low tom until the end. Nice. So I'm just building the static mix. That's a decent drum mix. I like a little room. We're gonna make changes, plenty changes, but I can hear everything. Everything's turned up. Nothing's too loud. Now, as I go, again, a lot of this isn't me looking at the meter as much as it is just me listening and saying, yeah, that's about the volume I normally mix drums at. If you need a little help, I use what's called the K-system metering, which is, I've explained it in other videos. I'll give it a brief explanation here. When I set the K system to K20, it's going to show me an average level of the volume here. And instead of showing me the peaks, it's showing me the average. And my goal with K20 is for the bulk of my mix to be around here where green turns to yellow, the loudest parts of the mix to get up here into the red, but not to stay in red for a really long time. To me, that gives me plenty of headroom where I'm not clipping, and it keeps me from needing to compress just to prevent clipping from happening. So right now, with just drums playing, it's already pretty into the red, so I'm going to guess I'll end up turning the drums down a little bit. Once I add everything, I'll realize, okay, drums are too loud, we got to bring them down. But that's what I'm looking at. As long as this thing isn't just blasting out red the entire time, and as long as I'm not clipping, I'm happy, and I just keep moving. So let's just continue down the line and start adding bass guitars and just see what kind of trouble we can get into. Let me re-loop this section here, and here we go. So bass is a little quiet, so I'm going to select the bass. I've got it at 0. It's still a little quiet. I'll check real quick to make sure we're not close to clipping. I know we're not. Let me select the audio and hit normalize. Boom. Got plenty of volume there. So I'll undo that, and I'll just bump it up 3 or 6 dB. Bass is a little muddy sounding. I'm going to need more low end out of it, so I'm going to make it a little bit louder. I'll cut some of the mid-range later, most likely. But it's already feeling great. Let's bring in these rocking guitars and make this thing sound like an actual rock song. All right, so we've got everything that's playing in that final chorus. Now we need to just go get all these little guitar parts that are coming in different sections, like the lead guitar here.
Can this be true? How could
By the way, if you're wondering how I'm moving the fader, I do have a PreSonus fader port, which is a little single fader. It sits right next to my mouse, so I'll select a track and then just grab that physical fader with my right hand and move it up and down. So that's how I'm doing that magic right there. Now, at this point in the mix, if you've been mixing for a while, you may notice, oh, I need to, like those acoustic guitars need some EQ in the low mids. The guitars need some definition. The vocals need compression and some more clarity. Yeah, those are all true. I am not worried about that right now. We are still just setting levels. Resist the urge to reach for plugins early and you'll thank me later. Let's go find out what else we haven't turned up yet and make sure we turn those up. Like these lead guitars are up. What else have we missed? A lot of these electric guitars aren't in yet. Let's just bring them all in. I'm going to guess they're all going to be about the same level. Whoop. See if those work.
Given the first clear thought, I'm suicidal.
Let's find that guitar that's not up yet. I love that.
You're not the only one. You're not alone.
All right, let's figure this little mystery out right here. We've got these four together. And then the 1 and 12 are supposed to be together because they play together here. So I'm going to flip the panning on those. I had them grouped differently. So let's just make 11 pan left. Oh, they're grouped. Let me ungroup them. Ungroup them. Go back to the order I had. 9, 10, 11, 12. That sounds better. And this section should still work. Yeah. Just a little bit of sound, but it can work. Okay.
You're not the only one. You're not alone. We'll experience the same. Let me help you deal with this pain. Time change.
Okay, we've got our first clip. If you've been looking over here on my mix bus, my main output, got a clip there. We've gone too loud. I knew that was coming. The mix was already feeling a little bit loud. You can see it lit up down here as well. That's not a problem. That's why we do this early. There's been no plugins introduced. We are still safe to just go in and turn everything down. So what I'm going to do is I can just select all the audio tracks this way. And you can see in Studio One, this little horizontal line here is my volume. So I can just select all the tracks and grab one of these faders and they'll all turn down. So let's just turn them down about 3 dB. That turns everything down. The bus levels still stay the same. We're just turning down the actual audio tracks themselves. Let's see how that's working.
You're not alone. We all experience the same. Let me help you.
So the vocals coming through is still a little bit loud. I know compression is going to fix that. But let me just let me turn the vocals down just a little bit. And let me just turn everything down a little bit more. Instead of doing it by saying, hey, why not 3 dB? Let me listen and actually move the faders down until it feels about right.
You're not alone. We all experience the same. Let me help you. Help deal with this pain. Time changes as we face our worst, but we learn to rise again. You're not alone. We will claim our own terrain. You're not the only one. You're not the only.
Real quickly, while it's playing that loudest part, I want to show you the metering again, just to make sure we really cover this well. So this is what K-system metering looks like. If you don't have that, this is what a normal meter looks like. As you can see, the average level is right around here, and the peaks are here, and you can see I'm getting within 2 to 4 dB of clipping. Arguably, that's still a little too loud. If we go back to the K-system meters, you can see we're hanging out in the red quite a bit, almost exclusively, which is kind of what you want. I'm going to bring it down a little bit more just so that I don't have to play that clipping game. So let's hit play and do that right now.
Help me deal with this pain. Time changes as we face our worst, but we learn to rise again. You're not alone. We will claim our own terrain. You're not alone. We all experience the same. Let me help you. Help deal with this pain. Time changes as we face our worst, but we learn to rise again. You're not alone. We will claim our own terrain.
That feels pretty good. I think drums could come up now that everything else is down just a little bit. Now I could do this at the drum bus. I'm going to leave those at 0 for now and just adjust the individual tracks because that just feels like the right thing to do.
You're not alone. We all experience the same. Help deal with this pain. Time changes as we face our worst, but we learn to rise again. You're not alone. We will claim our own terrain. You're not the only one. You're not the only one. You're not alone. We all experience the same. Let me help you. Help deal with this pain. Time changes as we experience the with it. Time changes as we face our worst. Time changes as we face our worst, but we learn to rise again.
There's this weird ticking sound, the tit, 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 tit. I can't figure out where it's coming from. Let me listen to just the drums for a second.
Rise our worst, but we learn to rise again. You're not
Okay, I guess it was just the tambourine mixed with the overhead a little bit. Sorry, if I couldn't figure out where it was, so I could turn it down. This is feeling kind of like a good static mix. Let's listen one more time.
You're not alone. We all experience the same. Let me help you. Help deal with this pain. Time changes as we face our worst, but we learn to rise again. You're not alone. We will claim our own terrain. You're not the only one. You're not the only one.
All right, cool. That essentially is the static mix. Now you may say, but Joe, you've only listened to that last chorus. Yeah, but that's given me levels for the biggest part of the song. Now we can obviously go back and we can change levels. We can adjust things throughout the whole song if we need to, but we've listened to every track in context of the mix, and we've moved some faders and volumes around and panners to get it feeling pretty good. So what I like to do at this point in the mix, I don't do this every time, is go ahead and record this static mix. This is kind of the gut level mix. So I'm going to go down here. I'm going to rename this layer gut mix. It's not a real mix. It's not something I would send to the client. Just kind of a reference for me of, hey, this is what felt good to me when I couldn't put any plugins in yet. It'll be fun to kind of reference back to this and listen back and say, oh yeah, remember how muffled everything sounded just from the raw tracks? We want to keep that energy, but we want to clear things up when we mix. So I'm not by any means saying it's anywhere close to done, but the levels feel good. It has a certain energy, a certain vibe, a certain raw rock and roll nature to it that I want to capture now. So video's over. What I'll do for the outro music for this video, I'll let the song just play through so we can hear we haven't heard the song in its entirety yet, and I'll just hit record. We'll record it down to this print track down here, and if I need to make some adjustments to the volumes as we go, I will totally do that. I think that's completely legal, and at the end we will have ourselves a static mix. By the way, while you're listening to this thing mixed down, head over to homestudiocorner.com/MT if you haven't already. Get your tracks and mix this along with me. There's still time to catch up, and you'll learn way more by going through the tracks yourself rather than just watching me do it. All right, that's it for me. Thanks for watching. See ya.